In a bustling Viking village, Lagertha stands atop a wooden platform, announcing her grand plan to raid the northern fortress. Her charisma ignites the warriors' spirits. The clan leaders gather in a grand hall where Lagertha spreads out a strategic map on a large wooden table. They debate the best route to the northern fortress. The blacksmiths are busy preparing weapons and armor. Forge fires blaze as the sound of hammers striking metal fills the air. Lagertha trains young warriors in an open field, demonstrating effective fighting techniques with shields and axes. Viking women prepare war supplies, filling leather pouches with food and water. A messenger arrives with news about the northern fortress's defenses, sparking intense discussions among the leaders. Lagertha speaks to the village youth, encouraging them to join the journey for honor and glory. By the riverbank, warriors begin preparing the longships for the journey. Lagertha prays to the gods at an altar, seeking protection and victory for their journey. With high spirits, Lagertha leads the warriors to the ships, ready to embark on their journey to the northern fortress. Lagertha arrives at the great hall of a neighboring clan, carrying her banner of peace. Her face radiates determination as she enters a room filled with clan leaders. Lagertha delivers a passionate speech, persuading the clan leaders to unite against the common enemy at the northern fortress. An elderly clan leader, skeptical of Lagertha's plan, asks pointed questions about the outcomes of this raid. Lagertha responds calmly, explaining her detailed strategy and using a large map on the table to support her argument. Some clan leaders begin to agree, offering their support by nodding and raising their cups. A young leader offers his warriors assistance, pledging allegiance to Lagertha for this cause. The discussion heats up as another clan leader expresses doubts about the logistics and timing of the raid. Lagertha demonstrates her intelligence and mastery of strategy by explaining supply details and retreat routes if needed. The War Council concludes with an agreement. All clan leaders stand with Lagertha, offering their oaths of support. Lagertha leaves the hall with a satisfied smile as the clan leaders begin preparing their warriors for war. Lagertha stands on the dock, overseeing the preparations of the ships that will carry her forces across the treacherous waters to the northern fortress. The warriors load the final supplies, including weapons, food, and water, ensuring everything is ready for the long journey. Lagertha's fleet finally sets sail, leaving the harbor with a mix of hope and anxiety filling their hearts. The wind picks up, filling the sails as the fleet enters deeper and more unpredictable waters. Lagertha consults with the ship's captain about the best route to avoid overly dangerous waters. A storm begins to approach, with massive waves crashing against the ships, forcing the warriors to cling tightly to the ship's ropes. Amid the storm, Lagertha orders the sails to be lowered to stabilize the ship and prevent it from capsizing. After the storm subsides, the fleet finds itself in calm waters, but surrounded by sharp coral reefs. Carefully, the ship's captain navigates the fleet through narrow passages between the coral reefs, following Lagertha's guidance. A small ship strikes a reef, but the warriors quickly salvage essential items and move to another ship. Tension eases as the fleet finally exits the reef area and enters safer open waters. In the distance, the northern fortress comes into view for the first time, perched atop steep cliffs surrounded by crashing waves. Lagertha's forces land on a gloomy shoreline. Ahead, a dense forest looms with an ominous atmosphere. Lagertha leads her troops into the dark forest. The sound of owls and snapping branches heightens the tension with every step. Scouts report enemy tracks within the forest. Lagertha decides to halt and discuss strategy. As night falls, Lagertha's forces set up a temporary camp. The campfires become their only source of light in the forest's darkness. As the warriors rest, Lagertha devises a strategy to counter potential traps set by the enemy within the forest. In the middle of the night, strange noises emerge from within the forest, putting the warriors on high alert. A sudden enemy ambush occurs. Lagertha leads a fierce counterattack with extraordinary bravery. After the battle, Lagertha inspects her troops. Despite the casualties, their spirits remain high. The next morning, Lagertha leads her troops out of the dark forest toward a safer area. Lagertha observes the landscape from the edge of the forest, planning the next step to reach the northern fortress. Lagertha leads her troops in forming a new strategy, leveraging courage and wit to face the next challenge. Lagertha's forces begin their march toward the northern fortress, blending with the landscape full of challenges and mysteries. Lagertha and her forces arrive before the northern fortress. Its towering walls and iron gates showcase the enemy's formidable defenses. Lagertha carefully observes the fortress, noting small weaknesses in its seemingly impenetrable defenses. Scouts report enemy patrols around the fortress, prompting Lagertha to plan a night assault. Night falls, and Lagertha leads her troops closer to the fortress with great caution, using shadows to conceal their movements. Lagertha's forces begin digging tunnels near the fortress walls, seeking a hidden way in. The sound of approaching guards echoes. Lagertha's forces hide behind bushes to avoid detection. Lagertha decides to distract the enemy with a small assault on the fortress's western side. The small assault successfully distracts the enemy, giving Lagertha time to approach the main gate. Lagertha's troops use a large wooden battering ram to try breaking open the fortress's main gate. The enemy realizes Lagertha's tactics and begins retaliating, throwing stones and arrows from atop the walls. Lagertha orders her forces to retreat momentarily to avoid enemy attacks and plan the next move. In a safe spot, Lagertha motivates her troops, ensuring they stay focused on capturing the fortress. As dawn begins to break, Lagertha leads her troops in a surprise attack on the northern fortress, taking advantage of the morning silence to catch the enemy off guard. The first arrows are launched by Lagertha's troops, targeting the guards atop the fortress walls. This attack signals the start of the battle. The enemy sounds the warning horn, mobilizing their troops within the fortress to face the sudden assault. Lagertha leads her main force to attack the fortress gate with a massive wooden battering ram, hoping to break it down before the enemy is fully prepared. The enemy begins a counterattack from atop the walls with arrows and boiling oil, forcing Lagertha to order her troops to take cover. Amidst the chaos, Lagertha employs strategy by sending a small group of warriors to sneak through a gap discovered on the side of the fortress. The small group manages to enter the fortress, opening a small gate from the inside to allow more Viking warriors to enter. Lagertha leads a charge through the small gate, attacking the startled enemy forces inside the fortress. The enemy troops attempt to hold their ground, using a shield formation to stop Lagertha's assault. Lagertha orders her archers to break the shield formation with a tactical maneuver. With the enemy formation broken, Lagertha's forces push forward with full force. Lagertha captures part of the fortress but knows the battle is far from over. As dawn breaks, Lagertha plans the final assault to seize the fortress. She knows this will be the bloodiest battle. Lagertha summons the clan leaders to devise the final strategy, calling for their courage and loyalty in this assault. Inside the fortress, enemy forces reinforce their final defenses, placing their best warriors at the main gate. Lagertha's troops advance toward the fortress, using large shields to protect themselves from the enemy's raining arrows. Lagertha leads her forces through a weaker side of the fortress, hoping to surprise the enemy focused on the main gate. A fierce battle erupts as the enemy realizes the attack from the fortress side. Lagertha fights valiantly, leading from the front. The Viking forces manage to destroy one of the watchtowers, giving them a strategic advantage in the battle. Lagertha leads the charge into the fortress, battling the enemy's elite warriors guarding their leader. A Viking warrior sacrifices himself to protect Lagertha, clearing the way for her to reach the fortress's main chamber. Inside the main chamber, Lagertha confronts the enemy leader in a deadly duel that will decide the battle's outcome. After an intense fight, Lagertha defeats the enemy leader, forcing the enemy forces to surrender. With this victory, Lagertha and her forces take control of the fortress. However, she knows the war is not yet over. After seizing the fortress, Lagertha convenes a meeting with the clan leaders to plan their next move. They decide to surround the remaining enemy forces. The Viking forces begin to move, forming their ranks around the enemy camp. Lagertha instructs them to set traps at the main exits. The enemy begins to realize they are surrounded, and tension rises in their camp. Their leader holds an emergency meeting. Lagertha sends a small group of troops to cut off the enemy's supply lines, ensuring they cannot receive reinforcements. The enemy attempts to launch an escape attack from the siege, but they are quickly caught in the traps set by the Vikings. Seeing the enemy's worsening situation, Lagertha sends an envoy to offer them a chance to surrender and save their lives. The enemy leader refuses to surrender, choosing to fight to the last drop of blood, even as his troops begin to lose morale. Lagertha instructs her troops to tighten the siege, cutting off all access in and out of the enemy camp. In the dark night, the enemy attempts to escape through a secret path, but the Vikings have anticipated it. With the enemy increasingly cornered, Lagertha decides to wait until morning before launching the final attack. The enemy begins running out of food and water, and many secretly surrender to the Vikings. With victory nearly in hand, Lagertha prepares her troops for the final assault that will decide everything. Under the morning sun, Lagertha leads her forces toward the final walls of the enemy stronghold. The Viking warriors march with determination, carrying ladders and siege tools. The enemy forces prepare to defend the fortress. Their archers ascend the walls, while others ready boiling oil and large stones. The battle begins as the Vikings fire flaming arrows toward the walls. Flames spread across the fortress, creating chaos among the enemy. Lagertha orders her troops to approach the walls with siege ladders. They climb despite being attacked from above. A massive explosion echoes as Viking warriors use a battering ram to break through the fortress gates, shattering the thick wood. The enemy forces attack from within, trying to defend the gate. A brutal battle erupts in front of the fortress. Lagertha leads a direct assault on the heart of the enemy's defenses, displaying extraordinary bravery in the midst of battle. The Viking forces finally breach the fortress walls, forcing the enemy to retreat to its inner sections. Inside the fortress, Lagertha confronts the enemy leader in a deadly duel to decide the battle's fate. Lagertha defeats the enemy leader with a clever strike, sealing the Vikings' victory over the fortress. The enemy forces surrender, laying down their weapons to the Vikings. The fortress is entirely under Lagertha's control. Lagertha raises the Viking flag over the fortress, marking their glorious victory. After the victory at the northern fortress, Lagertha and her troops prepare for the journey home. They carry the spoils of war and captives who surrendered without resistance. Lagertha decides to release some captives as a gesture of mercy, enhancing the Vikings' reputation as a people capable of compassion. The troops leave the fortress, marching through the forest with high spirits. They talk about their victory and a brighter future. During the journey, Lagertha holds a meeting with the troop leaders, discussing plans to rebuild their village. Night falls, and Lagertha delivers an inspiring speech to her troops, emphasizing the importance of unity and courage. The next day, the troops arrive at a wide river where they construct rafts to cross. During the river crossing, they face strong currents that nearly overturn their rafts. After crossing the river, they are greeted by villagers cheering for Lagertha's victory. Lagertha speaks to the villagers, promising to use the war spoils to improve their lives. That evening, the village celebrates the victory with a grand feast, accompanied by music and dancing. Lagertha reflects on their journey, contemplating the challenges they overcame together. As dawn breaks, Lagertha prepares to begin a new chapter as a leader respected by her people.